Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca Keppel. I am super excited to be here on ThermOWeb's YouTube channel today. We have a really fun swap with you between ThermOWeb and Newton's Nook, and I have a card to share with you that creates both background and embellishments with the designer toner sheets from ThermOWeb Brutus Monroe. So let's get started. So to get started, I have some Gina Designs amalgam ink, and I have the Happy HOWL-OWEEN stamp set from Newton's Nook, which is super cute. I am going to stamp all the images that I'm using on this one piece of paper because I'm going to color them and then I'm going to die cut them. So I am using the amalgam ink because I'm going to be doing a little bit of Copic coloring, nothing too fancy, but I do want to use an alcohol marker safe ink. So the reason that I'm using my mini Misty here is that there's so many details to the stamp. I wanted to make sure to get a nice crisp dark impression with my stamp. So there we go, that's everything that I need stamped out. And now I have some oranges that I'm going to color the little costume that the one dog is wearing. He's got a little pumpkin costume on. And I'm just going to, there's not a ton of room for blending and shading and such, but I am going to add some darker lines along the lines of the pumpkin so that those stand out, and then anywhere that he is touching the other dog where there would be shading. I'm going to color this dog in shades of gray, and you can see the colors that I chose there. Again, just a really light color, a nice medium, and then a darker color in the same range. And I'm going to do basically the same thing. Again, this is just tiny little bits here, except for his face, which I want to kind of leave bright anyway. I used some pink on the ears and the nose, and now I'm going to do the other dog in shades of browns, especially when I have two of the same animal next to each other, or any two animals, I guess, next to each other. I like to try and give them different color combinations. Makes it easier for me to figure out who I'm coloring and where the lines are and things like that. And I think it just kind of sets them apart a little bit. So I do like to color them, even though they're both dogs, different color combinations. I'm going to use that same pink for that dog's nose. And what I do is I use the light brown over the whole face, and then I just put that pink like right over the brown so that it kind of blends in, but it does have a slightly pink tinge to it. I'm going to do some darker grays for the cape. I don't want to do straight up black because I want to get all the details still in there. So I am going to use, I think it was a C7 was my darkest color. And then I am going to go in and do the hat. It's a witch's hat, but I thought it would be cute in purple just to bring in some more colors here. I don't want everything to be gray or black or anything like that. And I do want some Halloween colors because we're going to be using some bright backgrounds. So I am doing the hat in purple. I have kind of like a lime green for the stars. Now I'm going over the whole image once it's colored with a really light gray. That's because when I die cut it out, I don't want the harsh white lines from the paper because I'm going to be putting it on some other colors and things. So I do add that little gray line just around the edge as just a little bit of shading. Okay, now I have the ThermOWeb designer toner sheets from Brutus Monroe. This set is called Carved with all these fun pumpkins on it, and I do want to cut down that toner sheet to where there is going to be images flush to the paper, and originally I do cut it down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. If you're going to foil, I recommend, especially if you're not going to use the whole sheet at once, to cut it down before you foil it, because I find it's easier to get a really good transfer of the foil transfer sheets if you have a smaller piece that you're working with. You can cover a whole 8 1/2 by 11. It's just a little trickier to get it all nice and even. Okay, so this is the ThermOWeb Brutus Monroe Haunted designer toner sheet. So you can see this one is actually cardstock. I do have the clear acetate as well, but for this one I'm going to turn it into an embellishment, and I wanted it to be cardstock, just like the cardstock that we stamped and colored and die cut for our images. I am cutting my transfer sheets with a trimmer, but you can use scissors as well. I just find it really easy to get a nice cut when I use my trimmer. Now I'm going to make my sandwich. I have some parchment paper. I'm going to put the haunted piece in there, and then I am using today the Brutus Monroe ThermOWeb foil transfer sheets in green sketch, and then after that I'll be using orange sketch. Run it through the laminator. Make sure the laminator is good and hot, a good 10, 15, even more minutes. And I'm just showing you here that one side is kind of a matte and the other side is shiny. You're going to place the foil with the color side facing up on the matte side of the acetate, and that's how you know which side will transfer the foil. Okay, I'm going to pull back that foil, and now I have my little green haunted houses, and I am going to fussy cut one out, and I'm going to go flush to the outside of the house. Now, there are some interior pieces that will be white, but we're going to deal with those later. So for right now, I am just going to cut right up against that foiled image while my other piece is going through the laminator. And this is really easy to do because there's not lots of just basic straight lines. And for the other pieces, I just kind of go in and do the best that I can. Okay, now you can see that I have a little wrinkle here, and this is because of the way I fed it. And so when there's a wrinkle, it won't transfer. But don't panic, we can fix it. So I'm just gonna cut out another piece of the toner sheet, and I'm gonna trim it down because I don't need all of that hanging off the edge there. And I'll run that through the laminator, and you can see that that did the trick, fixed up my little wrinkle and the spot that I didn't cover. So no worries there. Okay, now to make that little house kind of match our die cut, I am going to go over the white bits of cardstock with some gray Copic. Again, just that light gray Copic that I used to shade the outside of our die cut. I'm going to use just to tone down the white of the cardstock, just so that everything kind of coordinates together and looks really good. I cut out a piece of orange cardstock. I will have the color linked in the description below. It's all Gina K cardstock. And I am going to use some VersaFine black Onyx ink to stamp the sentiment from Happy Halloween. I find that VersaFine does really well on colors of cardstock or on pattern paper. Now I'm going to use the Gina K dot roller to adhere a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 silver cardstock onto 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 black cardstock, and now I'm going to figure out how everything else is going to fit together. I did sort of cut that carved piece down a little bit so it sits right on the silver, and now I'm just putting the adhesive on the back of the pumpkins because you won't see it since they are foiled, and that will hold it down and in place as well. So next I'm going to figure out how this orange circle and our stamped image and our embellishment, which is the little haunted house, are all going to work together because those little doggies are trick-or-treating at the haunted house, and that's why the sentiment says trick-or-treat. So the first thing I'm going to do is adhere the embellishment, the house, and I'm going to adhere that flat to the card. Then I'm going to take the orange circle with the sentiment on it, and I am going to pop it up with some Gina K white foam squares. Just figure out where my stamped image is going to go and have it lay next to the sentiment. And then for the image, I'm going to double up the foam squares. I love how the foam squares are kind of on the thinner side. It gives you just enough dimension, but if you want a third layer, so I have flat and then I have that dimension and then I want that third layer to be even more popped up, you can layer them on top of each other. And that just gives you all that depth on these 3 different dimensions. I'm going to take the 2 little pieces of candy that I colored and die cut out, and I'm going to adhere them right on that little sentiment circle using a little bit of Ultra Bond liquid adhesive. That's really easy to just take a little piece like that and just be able to move it around and slide it into the right spot. Now I'm going to use the dot roller to adhere this card panel down to a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card, and that is almost good to go, but I felt like it needed a few sequins, so I'm going to use the Ultra Bond as well. I have a jewel picker to pick up my sequins and just touch it to the Ultra Bond. You don't need a lot with that Ultra Bond. It is pretty strong, and the nice thing is that since it's a liquid adhesive, it does give you a minute to kind of move things around, and then once it dries really, really well. So that's it, just some really easy ways to create some foiled embellishments and backgrounds using the ThermOWeb Brutus Monroe designer toner sheets and foil transfer sheets, creating lots of foiled effects on your background and combining them with the stamps and dies from Newton's Nook. If you're interested in any of the supplies that I used today, they will all be linked in the description down below. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a wonderful day.